Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your Disrupt MC and TechCrunch senior writer, Jordan Crook.
Good morning. Who went to the after party last night? Appreciate that. We've met before. Okay, we'll talk later. A couple housekeeping notes before we jump right in. We're still using the hashtag TCDisrupt. We do it every day of every Disrupt for years and years and years, so I should probably stop announcing it. We've got a little bit of a schedule change here due to maybe some traffic or whatever, for whatever reason someone's late. So we're going to kick the day off with the godfather of autonomous cars. Who's ready for autonomous cars? Yeah? Just can't get enough Pokemon Go, and it's hard to drive and throw the phone at Pokemon. Okay, so without any further ado, please welcome to the stage Sebastian Thrun from Udacity and Lora Kolodny, our moderator.
Happy birthday to you. Join me. Birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Lora. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I'm
21.
I'm timeless.
Good.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm almost as excited about the cake as I am to have you here. Jordan stole my line. Engineers, a few engineers have referred to you as the godfather of self-driving vehicles.
This is an exaggeration. There's so many people who deserve credit. Chris Urmson and so many others.
But I understand that your team won a DARPA Grand Challenge, and you led the development of Google's self-driving cars, right?
I mean, I still had hair a long time ago. That's correct.
But then, in 2012, you launched an education website, Udacity. That left a lot of tech observers and engineers wondering, what happened? Can you tell us a little bit about the career decision?
Well, I was working on Google X, on self-driving cars and Google Glass and all these wonderful technologies. But then I've started realizing there's only a very small number of engineers that can do this kind of stuff. And there's 7.4 billion people in the world that should be doing this kind of stuff. So we decided, instead of just building these things, why don't we empower other people to build the same things? At the time, to get good education was almost impossible. I mean, you have to go to Stanford and MIT or Harvard, but they don't take that many students. There was no great universities in the Middle East or in Africa or South America or Indonesia or India. So I felt if we could just build a new kind of university that could democratize education and really reach everybody, we could have a bigger impact on the world than just building a self-driving car.
Okay, one thing that's special about Udacity, and there are so many platforms that have followed in your footsteps or been really interesting peers. It's Coursera, Khan Academy, edX, Edmodo.
Many great
There
companies.
are many, and you're in good company now. But one thing that's special about Udacity is that you give students nano degrees, and for those who complete a nano degree and do not attain a job within 6 months of completion, you offer a refund.
Yeah, full tuition refund in the United States. So, I mean, we wanted to educate all the people in the world. We wanted to put a level playing field in so that people in Africa have the same chance as people in Silicon Valley. And then we started working with universities. And where are the best teachers in the world? At Stanford and MIT. But then it turned out to be a bit of a conflict because universities don't like to be disrupted. So we reached out to industry and started working with bleeding edge companies like Google and Facebook and Salesforce and many others. And we were able to put together tech curriculum for people that now millions of people have taken in machine learning. Today, we're actually announcing a self-driving car curriculum in iOS, in Android. And we invented our own degree. It's interesting. There's no law against inventing new credentials, so we call it nano degree to make it non-threatening for universities. It's very focused, it's very fast, typically half a year, and we really try to teach people very focused the skills required to be effective in a new area.
I want to ask about the refund. How many students are calling for their tuition back?
So far, we have refunded exactly 0 students.
Oh, wow.
And that doesn't mean we've managed to place every single student in jobs, but more than 500 students in last year found a job through the nano degree. And we have a whole bunch of partners that give actually preferential treatment to our students around the world. I mean, there's a company in India, Flipkart, one of the leading e-commerce platforms, that has actually hired our graduates without an interview. We just give them the CV and say, hire this person, and they hire them. So much faith in our trust in our credential. And they found that the people that they hired are among the top performers. Google has an annual camp where they invite the top 50 graduates over from Udacity. Google is actually co-signing the certificate with us, so they're putting the name under it. So industry is very ready for new channels of great people.
Can you tell us a little bit about this new nano degree program you just referenced in and around self-driving vehicles? What is it going to look like? How can you do that without a campus?
It's kind of crazy. In fact, out there's a self-driving car that we brought and just bought together. We built it together with autonomous stuff. We decided in Udacity, we wanted bleeding edge. We want to teach the kind of stuff that universities can't even teach yet because it's so incredibly new. And as we all know, the self-driving car has been in the news quite a bit in the last year. So we decided to work with Mercedes and Didi and Otto and NVIDIA and others to build a curriculum specifically for self-driving cars. And the cool thing is, we don't just build the curriculum, we actually build a car. So our students, our best students, will get a chance to run their software on the car. And we actually hope to open source all the software we find so we can build an open source platform for self-driving cars for anybody to use.
It's pretty interesting. The partners you mentioned, you said Mercedes-Benz, Didi, NVIDIA,
Otto, NVIDIA, yes.
and Otto, which is now owned by Uber, acquired by Uber. Those are incredible partners. How do you get buy-in from employers outside of the Udacity network?
It's easy. I mean, you all run amazing startup companies, and you know the single biggest obstacle is hiring talent. It's so hard to get good talent. If you run a self-driving car company, there isn't any university that has a degree on self-driving cars. So when we go to companies, in fact, you're all invited to talk to us. We have about 3,000 people on our network right now looking for jobs, and they have a very solid education in machine learning or Android or what have you, and soon, hopefully, self-driving cars. So we went to our partner companies. The number one thing we talked about is how can we get them great new talent? And we find talent around the world. We don't find talent through the conventional channels like LinkedIn or Stanford or MIT. We find people in Kazakhstan. We find people in Bangladesh who are any bit as smart as my strongest engineers.
So it sounds like you, rather than try to get buy-in on those credentials with other employers, you have enough large employers you're focusing on, is that right?
Yeah, and then we also work with these companies on content, right? So all these companies have expertise, Otto, Mercedes, and we work with them to curate the curriculum. So we tell them, look, what would it take for you, say Mercedes, to hire our graduates? And they come back and say, if they know the following 5 things, like probabilistic localization, deep learning, real-time controls, and so on. And then we put a curriculum around this that really implements projects in those spaces. So we really derive our curriculum from industry, and that's our secret sauce, because then we can go back to industry and say, look, you made the curriculum, right? It's your fault if the person is no good. You're going to hire him or her.
Let me ask, are you still teaching at Stanford and Georgia Tech and other traditional brick-and-mortar universities?
I taught at Stanford one course last year with my wife on disrupting humanities. I'm actually teaching at Georgia Tech, but I'm auto-teaching, so I have my entire course digitized, and it teaches itself, so I don't do very much. But my passion is really with this new type of education. I envision when the university is just so incredibly old. Like the way lectures are today is the same way the lectures were 100 years ago. I really envision we could build a university for the future. Like what would the university look like 50 years from now? Like what would be different? And what's clear to me, 50 years from now, learning has to be lifelong. It can't be that we have this one college degree and then are prepared for all the challenges in life. And it's because things move so fast today. In our field, computer science, every 5, 6, 7 years, everything turns over. So this learning is lifelong. It has to come to you. You can't go to it. It has to be with you. So I want learning to be as pervasive as Larry Page puts it, as brushing your teeth twice a day for 5 minutes, so we can stay current all the time. And it turns out there's very few people doing this. Like if you talk to all the big universities, they're all stuck in the dinosaur age of, nope, they have to have the campus experience and the gym and meet their play dates and go to the famous sage on the stage. And I just don't want to be part of this.
Do you think universities are going to become obsolete?
I think they change, and Udacity is not competing with universities. Like, I mean, if my son was admitted to, say, Carnegie Mellon or Udacity, I would actually send him to Carnegie Mellon. There's still a lot of inertia, and there's benefits that universities have we can't cover, like going to campus and having this campus life is something great for young people. Where we are is really the niche past college degree. We get kids typically from 24 years old on all the way to any age. And that's the time when people realize, oh, maybe the college degree isn't enough. And when people want to take the education in their own hand. And then there's a huge vacuum. No top university looks into what's called adult learners.
So I mentioned, and Jordan mentioned, some of your foundational research around self-driving vehicles. And you recently stepped out of the CEO role at Udacity to focus on innovation there. But among some tech and education tech investors, rumor has it that you're stepping back your kind of operational role at Udacity to possibly re-enter automotive. Is that true?
Yeah, so we don't quite know where it's going to go in the end. But we have a lot of experience with crowdsourcing now. So as a footnote, Udacity crowdsources not just mentors, student mentors, we crowdsource even engineering. And we have thousands of amazingly talented graduates in our network who are really smart people. So the vision I put forward to the team is, can we perhaps build a self-driving car with our students and at the same time use a self-driving car as a way for our students to engage and to try out their software. So we are committed to our students that we are admitting, in fact, admissions open today, admitting for the October term, to take their software and try it out on public streets in the Bay Area and see what happens. It's a new experiment.
You will build a crowdsourced, open source, self-driving vehicle.
That's our goal, yes.
And it will be on the streets in San Francisco?
Yes, if you see a car go by that has a Udacity logo, run as fast as you can the other way, just to stay safe.
I wanted to ask you a little bit on the technical side. Do you think it's possible to build a very good self-driving vehicle without LiDAR?
I think it is. And I think my thinking has changed over the years. I mean, when I started, you mentioned the DARPA Grand Challenge, it was like 10 years ago. We won a little race sponsored by the US government. And then subsequently, I started the Google self-driving car team. We used a LiDAR because we felt it was just the easiest way to get good information. And it probably is in good weather, not in bad weather. But the obstacles we are encountering is it's a fairly expensive piece of equipment. There is no automotive-grade LiDAR on the market, and I hope there's startup companies here fixing this problem. But we all know that humans can drive cars just fine without LiDAR. We don't have LiDAR eyes, we just have regular eyes. I've been intrigued by the recent progress on deep learning. It's completely amazing to see what Comma.ai and others are doing in this space. And I believe with the appropriate training, we can make a car using cameras only. Yes, I do.
Cameras only?
Yes, I do.
Purely vision.
And that's the proof is all of you, because all of you are able to drive cars with cameras only.
What about drones?
Well, that's a different topic. Drones are becoming very hot for package delivery. But the technology there is different. I mean, the difficulty there is, at this point, as you're in the air, you have to avoid collisions with other drones. And I think the FAA, the Federal Aviation Authority, is working very actively with the likes of Amazon and Google to figure out how to make drones flyable. Luckily, the legal situation in cars is much better. In cars, in California, you need a permit to drive. It's partially the legislation that my team enforced when I was still in power. But then you can just drive around and it's fine.
So, okay, I'm blown away by the idea of a school that becomes a car company. Even if it's open source, would that be revenue generating for Udacity?
Look, our revenue base is students, right? We believe that if we can empower students, people around the world, to take a career step from here to here, that we add so much value to the world, that if we keep a little bit of the value as sort of cash on our end, we will be just fine. In fact, we don't really worry about revenue, to be honest. We really worry about how can we have the maximum impact on the world. I have zero interest in monetizing something else, to be honest. I mean, like something like a car, because for me, it's more a student exercise. It's an ability for students to get a new skill. We will be the only institution, I believe, in the world that will give a credential in the space of self-driving cars.
What would you like to see other edtech platforms doing differently? For example, do you think there needs to be some kind of data that the industry agrees to always disclose to students before they enroll? What are some of your ideas about the e-learning industry?
If I simplify e-learning from my current perspective, I would see two types of companies. There's the companies that team up with existing providers like high schools and universities, and they work with them. There could be learning management systems or MOOC systems. And then there's the companies that are entirely outside, like the bootcamp companies or similar, who build amazing content outside. And the fundamental problem is, in my opinion, and there might be exceptions, if you work with the existing providers, you're beholden to their rate of innovation, which is basically zero. So it's very hard to make progress. If you work outside, it's very hard to have the credentials that people trust. And bootcamps are doing a phenomenal job pushing this, but it's not mainstream yet. But I'd love to see, I know as a fact that industry employers are very open towards new pathways for education. I'd love to see all our companies to really put a strong push forward and say, look, the past we had these credentials like bachelors and masters, and they're great and they should survive. But because lifelong learning is on the rise, in the future, we need these kind of credentials, faster, more focused credentials. And it would be great to see kind of a landslide movement in this country and worldwide where people gain trust in these new credentials, like the nanodegree.
How do you distribute education? I mean, you've got the content, the curriculum, but how do you make sure people in these less developed markets have access to the internet and the hardware? Are you working on that problem?
Well, that's the cool thing about this time. I mean, the penetration of access has gone up so rapidly fast, and we have wonderful people like Mark Zuckerberg and Larry Page worrying about augmenting this around the world. At Google, we had a project to launch balloons to give everybody access. Or we have a project, Google has a project. So I don't want to spread myself too thin and build a fiber company or a wireless company or a satellite company, because others do this already. But we can embark on this trend. Right now, in terms of mobile devices, there's more than 3.6 billion registered mobile devices in the world, and that number is rapidly increasing. So for a student of the future, if he or she uses Udacity or somebody else, the only requirement has to be, do we have internet connectivity? And it's still sad that half of humanity doesn't have internet connectivity, but it's so much better than even 2 or 3 years ago.
I was just reading a study that said more people have access to cell phones than toilets now, which is, it's tragic, but also profound.
It is so amazing.
As far as your involvement with Google, are you still actively involved in the X team, the Moonshot initiatives there? In what ways, if yes?
I don't have an active association with X anymore. I'm, of course, friends with many of the people, and I keep track with what they do, and that's pretty much it right now.
Okay.
So I'm committed to other things, like Udacity.
We got a couple more minutes on the clock. At some point, I'm happy to say, so I want to come back to the nano degree program. If you're not campus-based, where does that take place? I mean, you have to have some time where you're testing it before it's on the streets of San Francisco, this kind of student-developed car. Where will you do that?
So you worry about the car, not the education.
Well, I guess, as a resident here who walks on the streets, maybe.
Tell you the past was interesting. When we started the Google self-driving car project, we actually drove pretty much from day one. We had 8 Priuses. We drove them on public streets. And what kept us safe was a well-trained safety driver who was able to take over the steering wheel at any time. the car, that autonomous stuff built for us, has the same capabilities. So there's going to be a person behind the wheel ready to take over any time. The Google self-driving car drove undetected to anybody for a year and a half. We had 8 of those out, every day driving. No one had a clue. We were running this massive experiment to develop the software, and we kept it safe over the years. I envision the same for the new self-driving car, that we're going to just drive it first maybe on parking lots and then on public streets. And we always have a safety driver to take over, exactly the same way we do at Google.
Who is that, the valedictorian who gets to do that? How do you pick the safety driver?
Do you want to be one?
I would love to, yes.
Well, the law dictates that they get training. I'm actually a trained safety driver. The most important part is that people understand the responsibility of being there, so there's no texting, no fatigue, no looking onto your cell phone or whatever, and just be alert. And then we always put mechanisms in place to make sure if something goes wrong, that the driver knows about it. So for example, our software has little bugs built in that monitor the traffic flow between processes. And if something kind of dies, like your camera goes down, your laser goes down, the driver knows before the car can even react.
Last quick question. Everyone thinks about self-driving cars killing jobs, like taxi drivers' jobs or so forth, truck drivers. What are a couple of the jobs that you think will be in the greatest demand and on the rise with this industry?
Well, first of all, I believe self-driving car engineers are in demand. I'm sure there's a whole bunch of companies here who would love to hire some, in generally, artificial intelligence, machine learning engineers. So I think the workforce has to shift to a more skilled workforce. But I mean, the biggest vision in self-driving cars, and there's many different products you could imagine, but the biggest vision is what I call transportation as a service, where you take out your phone and you call your transportation provider, be it Lyft, be it Uber, be it Google, whatever it is, and you push a button and a car pops up, gives you a ride, and then goes away. And the implications of this are fundamental. First, we need many fewer cars, maybe a third as many, which will impact the manufacturers. Insurances will be impacted. Right now, car insurances sell to end customers. They're going to maybe sell to corporations in the future, or maybe they might be even self-insured. And then your restaurant will be different. Your office building, if you build an office building today, you have to offer parking space. In the future, we might not do. 60% of the Los Angeles land mass is dedicated to cars. It's actually quite a bit. So real estate will be different. It'll be a big transformation, and honestly, I can't wait.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate your being here, and I learned a lot.
Thank you, and happy birthday, Laura.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.